But this programme has seen concerning evidence of a toxic culture inside the Commission, with claims of bullying, harassment and discrimination, along with a wave of resignations. Our investigations editor, Cathy Newman, has this exclusive report.
On the third floor of this anonymous building in central London is one of Britain's most important watchdogs, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. But it's at the centre of a maelstrom over claims of bullying, discrimination and concerns over its independence that have led to a flood of resignations.
It was heartbreaking. I couldn't be complicit in the erosion of what the organisation is supposed to be.
I was on calls where staff were crying. I know of various instances where staff were upset, worried and troubled about what was going on.
Everyone was just so sad, and it only took a few months before I was like, forget this, I am out.
The Equality and Human Rights Commission is one of the most important independent bodies in the country. Independent of government but answerable to Parliament. Its job is to help make Britain fairer by safeguarding and enforcing the laws that protect people's rights to fairness, dignity and respect. It investigated the Labour Party over anti-Semitism and discrimination at the Met Police. Now we can reveal the chair of the Commission is herself under investigation.
It's about being open-minded.
Having respect for human dignity.
The Commission proudly proclaims itself as a defender of human rights. Its standard bearer is Baroness Kishwer-Faulkner. She was appointed chair in 2020 by Liz Truss, who expressed concerns the Commission had become dominated by a small number of unrepresentative voices and dangerous groupthink.
And we're going to make sure that that level playing field is properly enforced. That's why I'm appointing a new chair and a wide variety of commissioners to the Equality and Human Rights Commission to drive this agenda forward.
But now Lady Faulkner is under fire. Her leadership is the subject of an investigation led by an independent barrister. The terms of it are secret, but we've learned it will examine allegations of discriminatory behaviour by her. And the controversy at the Commission goes even wider than that investigation. We've spoken to more than 20 current and former members of staff. Lady Faulkner's supporters say she's made the Commission sharper and leaner. But other staff, as well as public and confidential documents we've reviewed, paint a disturbing picture of the culture at the Commission. One confidential document written by some senior staff in February says, "We are deeply concerned about an increase in bullying, harassment and discrimination, which is not in line with who we are as an organisation. There is a lack of psychological safety, i.e. the fear of who will be attacked next." And it says, the board, including the chairwoman, are not functioning in line with good governance. About Lady Faulkner specifically, it says, unacceptable behaviour from the chairwoman is becoming normalised. Staff are not treated with courtesy and respect/bullying. And notably, discriminatory comments/discussions have been openly had with officers present, e.g. November board meeting on the Equality Act. The meeting in question took place the day after a trans woman, Emma Laslett, was a contestant in the final of the BBC's Brain of Britain radio show.
Our next finalist, please.
Laslett had appeared on TV in 2020, and her inclusion in a radio programme described as an all-woman final made headlines.
And your name is?
Emma Laslett.
Before an official board meeting of the Commission the next day, attended by 22 commissioners, officials and a representative from the Government Equalities Hub, Lady Faulkner is alleged to have singled Laslett out, describing her in disparaging terms as a bloke in lipstick. We understand the Commission's chief executive rebuked the chair. We put those comments to Emma Laslett herself.
I mean, if that's true, it's, I mean, on the one hand, not the worst comment I've received, but on the other, it's disgusting and just disheartening. If your job is to protect people from discrimination, and while on duty and in front of everybody else who's doing that, you are peddling that kind of discrimination, then you're not fit for the job and honestly shouldn't be doing it anymore.
The Commission told us they treat allegations of bullying and harassment with the utmost seriousness, and it would be wrong to comment when an investigation is ongoing. Staff welfare is of paramount importance to us. Some staff we spoke to raised other concerns. Many expressed fear the Commission's impartiality and independence from government is under threat. And they claimed the chair and board were assisting the government in undermining trans rights by proposing amendments to the Equality Act. One staffer told us what they believe.
The crux of the issue is we've been severely politically compromised at the very top of the organisation. We are effectively puppets on strings.
With heightened public debate around single-sex spaces, trans women in sport and trans prisoners, in January the Women and Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch signalled her support for changing the Equality Act to make birth sex the legal definition of sex. Some women's groups argue a change would help protect safe spaces for women.
This government has put in place at the head of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission.
Trans rights groups were outraged. They argue around 7,000 trans people already granted gender recognition certificates could be stripped of legal rights that have been law for over a decade. In February, Kemi Badenoch wrote to the Commission seeking their view. We've learned that the Commission's leadership and executive team had already considered this and commissioned legal advice. It recommended that contentious issues on single-sex spaces could be addressed without changing the law as Badenoch proposed. Advisory committees in Scotland and Wales agreed. But the board and its chair, Baroness Faulkner, pressed on. In April, she wrote to Badenoch saying changing the law would bring greater legal clarity.
It feels like a sort of mask-off moment. There's no hiding from the fact that this is not an impartial or objective approach to the issue of trans rights. This is very clearly an attempt to undermine their rights. It's the exact opposite of what the National Human Rights Body should be doing.
The Commission told us our decisions are and have always been made independently of any government. No advice is disregarded. Lady Faulkner's approach has caused consternation. In the last 2 months, at least 7 senior figures have quit the organisation or handed in their notice, including one commissioner.
I think the EHRC was being used by government ministers to help them achieve their political interests around some of these culture war issues. And I think that's incredibly dangerous, because the EHRC is supposed to be the independent watchdog on equality and human rights. And the sad, heartbreaking thing about that is that the most vulnerable people, such as trans people, end up being on the front line of that game. And their lives are made worse. And they end up being worried and scared about what's going on.
Events over the last few years have left many Commission staff feeling demoralised. Internal numbers shared with Channel 4 News suggest 1 in 4 staff left the Commission last year. As for staff who identify as LGBT+, 2 in 5 left last year. The staff complaint states baldly, "We are particularly concerned about the high rates of attrition from the LGBT+ group and are worried that the Commission is becoming an unsafe place to work for this community."
I've never seen anything like it. Skilled professionals with years and decades of experience in human rights are just leaving for temporary jobs, or in some cases literally no job, because we just can't stomach it.
The Commission told us the departure of staff at all levels is driven by a number of factors. The Commission told us tonight that the issues it finds itself handling can be very complex, and there are a range of views, as there are in society at large. Nevertheless, it's promised to continue to protect the rights of everyone in Britain.
Well, shortly before we came on air, we received a statement from Baroness Faulkner saying, "I have worked my whole life to promote the principles of equality and human rights, which are close to my heart as a British Pakistani woman in public life. It was considered appropriate to investigate the allegations through an independent investigator. While that process continues, all I can do is explain that allegations were received in February in my capacity as chair of the Commission. They relate to both me and to the whole board. I, of course, take these allegations very seriously and with humility. I will be cooperating fully with the investigation and have every confidence in being exonerated. I am always prepared to take criticism, to reflect on my decisions and to hear from those I may have inadvertently upset by my actions or those of the board. Well, earlier I spoke to Conservative MP Caroline Noakes, chair of the Women and Equality Select Committee. I asked her whether she thought Baroness Faulkner should resign from the Commission.
I'm not going to jump to conclusions about what the investigation will find. What I'm worried about is the very high staff turnover at the EHRC, and certainly that will be an issue that is raised with them when they next appear in front of my committee, which will be in July.
I mean, allegations of harassment and bullying, 1 in 4 staff having left, not a safe place for LGBTQ plus people to work. It is extraordinary, given what the Commission is there to do, isn't it, these claims?
They are absolutely appalling allegations. My committee has already written to the EHRC querying the very high staff turnover, and there are clearly issues with senior staff leaving the organisation. I think the EHRC needs to act on whatever this independent inquiry finds and make sure that it gets its house in order.
When she was appointed, Liz Truss, who was then Women's Minister, said it was essential that she go in to tackle groupthink. There is a strong argument being made that this is just the group taking issue with that, not wanting to change the way it does things.
Well, the EHRC, and this is an issue that we have queried endlessly with them, needs to be able to uphold everybody's rights. It cannot advantage one group over another, and there is no reason why women's rights and trans people's rights should be a zero-sum game. I will be very disappointed if it is found that there has been groupthink on any issue from any perspective which has adversely impacted a single group.
Supporters of the chair are saying exactly that she has gone in to defend the rights of women that many people within the Commission feel is being somehow subsumed by the argument in favour of supporting trans people.
Well, it is the job of the Commission to act impartially. It's the job of the Commission to uphold everybody's rights, to protect all of those who have identified characteristics which are protected under the law. They cannot discriminate in favour of one group against another, and it's important that we get to the bottom of these allegations, that we look at an organisation that has a very high staff turnover, and that those allegations of bullying, of harassment, of discrimination are interrogated very closely indeed.
Some of the people within the Commission that we've spoken to who work there say they are now no longer confident that it is truly independent from government. Are you?
Well, look, this investigation that they've asked an independent barrister to carry out will be incredibly informative. They still have some written questions from my committee that they need to respond to, and I think that response should be due at the end of this week. But it's just wrong that an equalities watchdog has this sort of cloud hanging over it.
But there is that bigger issue about not being truly independent from government. And where do you stand on that at this moment, given what we've learnt today?
I'm very conscious that the chair is a Liberal Democrat member of the House of Lords. She is not a Conservative peer. She was appointed by a Conservative government. But it is her job to make sure that she leads that organisation impartially, fairly, and indeed with respect for all of those with protected characteristics.